So welcome. This is a quick video on how to create your graph for the density lab. And so what you're looking at right now is our density lab. I'm going to go ahead and scroll through, but what you want to do, as we talked in class, is read through the whole thing once and then go back and start answering some of those analysis questions that you can. Some of them you have to do the data first, and that's what we're about to do. So I'm going to scroll the whole way down here. You want to read through this equipment portion as well, at least once. And now we get to the lab itself. So we have the purpose of the lab, the hypothesis, our procedure. You're going to watch this video and fill in your lab table. We've talked about that in class already. Once you're done, your number one in your analysis section is to create your graph. We've done this before. We have the same set of steps that we want to take with one addition. So I added it as a last step, even though letter F says to click the video. This is the addition part, and that's forecasting the line, and I will show you how to do that. So when we create our graph, we want a title, we want axes labels with units, we want our trend line, our R-squared value, our line equation on the graph, and we're also going to forecast back. And so once you're ready, you're going to take the values you have in your mass column and the values you have in your last calculated volume column. Those are the two you're going to graph. So the first column in mass and the last column volume. And so what I have over here on this Excel sheet are some made up numbers. They're actually the same numbers I used the first time for aluminum density. But anyway, so I've written down all of my mass values. I've written down all of my volume values. I also at the top put which axes I want these on to keep myself straight. And actually I'm going to move this because what you want to do is highlight X first, and that will put the graph in the right order when you go to do that. And so because our slope is our density and density is mass per volume, slope is y over x, so we want mass on our y-axis and we want volume on our x-axis, so we could use the slope to find density. So now we're done with the lab document. I'm just going to make Excel bigger here and do our graph. And so I'm going to highlight the numbers. I don't need the titles. That was just to keep me straight. I'm going to go up to Insert, Charts. There's a whole bunch of other graphs here. Remember, there's bar charts, there's pie graphs, and so forth. You want to click this last one here. These are your scatter plots. And of all the scatter plots, the first one's the best, and we've talked about why before. I'm going to click on the first one. And now I have my graph. I also want to pause here and just make sure everything is plotted correctly. I want volume on the x-axis, and my volume's biggest number is 25. And so the fact that my x-axis is going up to 30 means I have it in the right place, because my y values, my mass only goes up to about 10, and that's good. And so you want to just double check that you have everything graphed correctly. If you put them on your Excel spreadsheet as volume, then mass, you highlight it that way, it should come out correctly. Now I want to fix it up. So I want a title. I'm going to just click on it and change the title. So you could use my title or you could use your own, but typically you would title your graph what you are graphing. So I'm graphing mass versus volume. I'm graphing density, if you want to say density of unknown metal. It is actually not a metal that you're doing, it's just a random substance, you'll see, but you want to make a title of the graph. Then you have a choice to make. You can either click on the graph and the plus sign here to add the rest of your stuff onto the graph, or if that's not showing up for you, up here in the top right corner or left corner, you also have add chart element, and you can find everything you need there as well. So I'm going to go back over to the graph, click on it, click on my plus sign. I want to add axes titles. So I'm going to click that. And now I need to go in there and fix them. And so again, on the y-axis, that's my mass. So I'm going to write mass. And you also want to write the units that it's in. so grams. And at the bottom, I have volume, and I'm going to put milliliters for volume. Right, so I have my title, I have my axes labels. Now I need my trend line. So again, I'm going to click on my graph, use the plus sign, go down to trend line, click on it. It's going to put it on my graph. It draws the best fit line between your data points. Looks like a straight line. The points are close enough. It's a linear graph, I know, and it's pretty good. I see a point or two that's not, you know, a little further away from the line. If by chance, let's stop here. If by chance you do yours, and let me just put like a weird number in here. Let's see. I don't know, that might be too high. 20. And so if I switch that number, you could see where that point went. It's way off of the line. So if you end up doing your graph and you have a point that's really different than the rest, then maybe go back to that one and take your measurements again, or calculate the density or the volume again, because maybe something went wrong with that data point. You shouldn't have anything so extreme like that if you're watching the video. So I'm going to go back to the correct one. There we go. And now I have my trend line. I need to add my R-squared value, my line equation, and I'm also this time going to forecast back. And so let's go over to that plus sign, down to trend line, put that back on there, and hit the arrow. I'm going to go down to more options. Okay, so now I get my trend line options to pop up. Let's see if I can move this over a little. Okay. So I have my trend line options to pop up. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and I'm going to click display equation on the chart. That's going to give me my line equation, which we're going to use in one of our analysis questions. And I'm going to click on the R-squared value that helps us to determine how good our data is, right? So one way to visually see how good your data is to look at the trend line and make sure that all of the data points are really close to that line. So the closer they are to the line, the better your data. A numerical way to determine how good your data is to look at the R-squared value. The closer that R-squared value is to 1, the better your data. In our case, I have 0.98, so pretty good, really close to 1. And I visually could see that I have good data with the trend line, so I'm in good shape. Right, so I've clicked the display equation on the chart and display my R-squared value. And now the last thing I want to do is forecast. So you can see here right above, I could forecast my line forward, or I could forecast my line backwards. And so right now, my line pretty much goes the whole way forward onto the screen that I could see, right? So I don't need to forecast that line any further. However, I do want to forecast the line backwards to get close to the origin. And the reason for that is because I would like you all to estimate some masses and or volumes using the graph to be able to kind of practice that skill. And so right now, if I asked you to, estimate what the mass of this substance would be at a volume of 2 milliliters, if you go over to the graph, 2 milliliters doesn't have any data points and the line's not there. So you're really kind of flying blind, you could visually see where the line is supposed to go. But if you forecast backwards, you'll have the line through the entire quadrant of the graph, and that's what we want. And so all you need to do is kind of estimate how far away you are. So I'm about 5, 6, 7 milliliters or points away from my origin. And so I'm going to try 7. So in this backwards area, I'm just going to write 7 and hit enter because I want to forecast back. And that's pretty good. Let me share with you what happens if you forecast, let's forecast 20 back and make it really big. And so now I see the graph, which is fine. I get the whole thing that I wanted, but I also have this big negative portion of the graph. There's no such thing as negative density or negative volume or negative mass. There's no reason why we need to look at the negative portion of the graph. And so although this wouldn't be wrong, we only need to estimate or forecast back too close to the origin. That's what makes sense for the data we're collecting. And so I wouldn't go too big. You could use trial and error. Say you started with 20 and you see that it's too big. I'm going to go to 10, and that's pretty good. I only see a little portion of the negative part of the graph. I'm going to go a little bit smaller back to where I was, like 8. even better, maybe I'll try 7. And it looks pretty good. If you want to even go back 6, we could try. So I'm not sure where you're going to be on your graph, but at this point, I see the whole positive quadrant of my graph there. I don't see any negative portions, and that's what I want. So that's what forecasting does. It puts your line through as much as the graph as you want, right? When we get to gas laws, we're going to forecast back all the way -500. But for us here, with density and masses and volume, we don't need to do that. So we just want to forecast close back to the origin, and now we have everything we need. And so just as a quick recap of what we did, I'm going to go back over here to the graph and click on my line equation r² value, just scooch it over a little so it's easy to see. Because this is a straight line, right, we get the y is equal to mx plus b line equation, where our slope, the 0.384, is our density in this case, right? And that will be your case as well. But anyway, you're going to go to your data on your lab document. You're going to write your X values of volume, your Y values in mass. You're going to highlight them, go into insert, this last piece of the charts, which is scatter plot. The first scatter plot, I'm not going to do it again. And then once you have it there, you're going to click on your graph and hit the plus sign and start adding in the rest of your information. So your title, your axes titles, your trend line. When you get to the trend line, I'm going to go down there again, more options. And that's where you scroll down and you want to click on, it didn't come up, 1 second. You're going to scroll down, and that's where you want to click on display equation, display r² value. I already have them there, so if I click it again, it's going to duplicate it, so I'm going to let it go. And then you want to go to this forecast section and probably forecast backwards, I believe. Now, you may have to forecast forward. I'm not sure. I don't think so, though. And so for us, we're going to forecast backward to make sure that our graph gets close to the origin. And that's it. So hopefully this helps creating your graph. If you have any questions or you need some help from me, just let me know.